Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking something that's, well, it's deeply universal, but honestly rarely talked about with the clarity it deserves. We're looking at the silent fade, why some of our absolute closest friendships quietly die out, and how we can learn to let them go without carrying that heavy burden of guilt. I really love how our source material breaks this down because it validates an emotional experience so many of us have had, but just haven't quite known how to articulate. So let's dive right in and explore the architecture of a fading friendship. So, have you ever watched a close friendship just slowly and quietly fade away? To really get a grip on what we're talking about today, let's introduce a hypothetical pair of friends. We'll call them Alex and Jordan. Now imagine they used to share absolutely everything. They knew each other's coffee orders, they texted constantly, they were even each other's emergency contacts. But over time, something shifted. As we go through this explainer, I want you to project your own experiences onto Alex and Jordan's story. Think about that person who was once a daily fixture in your life, but who now feels kind of like someone you used to know.
Section 1. The silent decline. When silence replaces communication.
You know what's fascinating about this kind of decline? It's really about what it lacks. Unlike a dramatic romantic breakup or some massive explosive argument, these bonds just end slowly. Like with Alex and Jordan, there was no explosive fight. Instead, their messages simply became shorter. The plans they used to make, they just stopped happening. Replies that used to take seconds suddenly started taking days, and their conversations completely lost their previous depth. Both of them probably felt it happening, but neither really knew how to stop it. It leaves you feeling like you are looking at a stranger carrying familiar memories. That is a powerful analogy right from our source material. It perfectly describes the strange, quiet loss of this kind of fade. When you look at your friend, you see the face of someone who holds literally all your inside jokes and past secrets, but they suddenly feel incredibly distant. It's a very particular, very confusing kind of grief, mainly because there's no clear explanation for the loss, just a silence that has grown over time.
Notice how this process actually unfolds. Friendships almost never just collapse all at once, right? They almost always fade psychologically, way before they disappear socially. The emotional connection weakens first. Only then does the behavior follow. Alex and Jordan didn't just stop texting out of nowhere. First, they stopped feeling as deeply connected or understood by one another. And as a totally natural result of that, the impulse to reach out and share their lives simply vanished. Silence replaces communication because, well, the emotional foundation is already gone. Section 2, Life Transitions. The changing structure of connection.
So why does that emotional connection weaken in the first place? Well, a lot of the time it's just a life transition. People change environments, they pick up new routines, they take on heavier responsibilities, and naturally their priorities shift. Imagine Alex moved to a new city for a super demanding job, while Jordan stayed in their hometown and started a family. The very foundation of their daily lives underwent a massive shift. A friendship built around proximity, shared habits, or maybe even a specific version of who you were back in school, it has a natural scaffolding. But with new environments, new routines, and new priorities, that scaffolding is removed. The absolutely crucial takeaway here is that drifting apart isn't a betrayal. It doesn't mean Alex or Jordan is a bad person, it simply means the literal architecture holding their connection together changed, and the friendship just struggled to stand without it.
Section 3. The weight of resentment. When emotional safety erodes.
All right, now we're getting into the hidden internal dynamics that actually speed up the silent fade. As life changes, an emotional asymmetry often develops. One person is growing while the other stays emotionally distant. In our story, Jordan keeps reaching out, trying to maintain the old frequency of contact, while Alex slowly disengages because of their demanding new life. Eventually, this imbalance creates a very quiet, very heavy exhaustion fueled by unspoken tension. We're talking about feeling unsupported during a tough moment, maybe feeling forgotten when a text goes unanswered, feeling taken for granted, or totally misunderstood. These are small disappointments, but they're never addressed. You see, a lot of friendships don't end because someone committed a massive dramatic betrayal. They end because this unresolved tension slowly, quietly eats away at the emotional safety of the bond.
Think about it like this. Society actively teaches us how to survive conflict in romantic relationships, doesn't it? We literally go to couples therapy, we read books on communication, we fully expect arguments. But with friendships, we use avoidance to keep things easy. We really don't want to rock the boat, so we sidestep those difficult conversations. But as our source points out, avoidance doesn't remove the distance, it silently feeds it.
Section 4. Evolution and nostalgia. Identity shifts over time. As people evolve, literally everything about them shifts. Their values, their interests, their emotional needs, even their self-perception. Sometimes, two people genuinely just outgrow the dynamic that once connected them. Alex and Jordan might simply not be the same people they were 5 years ago, and therefore, they just aren't compatible as close friends anymore. But man, accepting this identity change is incredibly difficult. It hurts, and it hurts because of nostalgia. That confusing expectation that an old connection will magically return simply because the memories of it remain emotionally alive. You remember who they were. You remember who you were when you were together. And part of you is desperately waiting for that old dynamic to just spark back to life. But the harsh truth here is that relationships exist only in the present. They do not exist in memory.
Have you ever had that sudden realization that you're only staying connected to someone because of the sheer amount of time you've invested in them? You're basically surviving through history rather than, genuine alignment. You stay friends because of the past, not because the relationship still feels nourishing today. When that genuine alignment is gone, your interactions start feeling super forced instead of natural. The whole thing just becomes a chore rather than a joy.
Section 5. Removing the guilt. Accepting the end.
If you're recognizing Alex and Jordan's story in your own life right now, let's shift to a softer perspective here, because we really can navigate this natural evolution without beating ourselves up. First, we have to stop treating every drifting friendship as a failure. Not all relationships are meant to last forever. Some people are just tied to specific chapters of your life, and that's okay. Second, learn the difference between temporary distance and emotional absence. Healthy friendships can absolutely survive months of physical time apart, but they cannot survive permanent emotional indifference. Third, communicate earlier. Honest conversations are uncomfortable, for sure, but silence ends relationships way more thoroughly than conflict ever does. And finally, allow people to change without turning it into a betrayal. Life just changes the direction of both people sometimes.
I want to leave you with this thought. I think it perfectly wraps up the narrative of Alex and Jordan, and honestly, I hope it brings you some peace. Friendship is not measured only by how long it lasts, but by how real it was while it existed. Just because a friendship ends, or maybe fades into the background, that does not erase its past value. It doesn't mean the connection was fake or meaningless. It was beautifully real for the exact time it was meant to be. Which brings us to our final thought. Are you ready to accept that the hardest part of growing is realizing not everyone is meant to grow beside you forever? It's a bittersweet truth from our source material, but an incredibly liberating one. As you reflect on your own life and the different chapters of personal growth you've experienced, give yourself permission to appreciate the friends who have faded and give yourself grace as you continue to grow forward. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.